All right, welcome to the State of Education. Today I'm going to be reacting to a certain type of video that I usually see a lot of around May or June, usually at the end of the school year, and that is teachers explaining why they are leaving the teaching profession, why they no longer want to be teachers. I always see so many of these videos. The ones I have seen, they usually give pretty similar reasons. I usually agree with a lot of them. This one that I'm going to be watching in particular, I haven't seen yet, but I'll go through and give my feedback on whether or not the things she's seeing are things that are similar to what I've seen. I'll try to look up some information if it's needed, and we'll just see why are teachers seeming to quit the profession. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the video here and let's see what she has to say.
So hello, this is Keisha Shanae, and I'm making this video to talk about why I quit teaching. The first thing I was told when I began teaching was that most teachers quit within the first 5 years.
I just wanted to pause there for a second because that is something that as a teacher you usually hear a lot of. And I want to take a moment to just do a little research and see whether or not that's actually true. So I did just look up some information, and from what I can find, it looks as though about 30% of new teachers are quitting their jobs within 5 years. However, it also does talk a lot about teachers taking early retirement and quitting early. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. Right now, at least in my state, the teacher retirement system tops out at 30 years. A lot of teachers are going less than 30, but if you start teaching when you're 22 years old, then really 30 years is age 52. And currently, at least in the district I'm at, that's where our salary schedule tops out, which means you're not going to start earning more money after 30 years. You're just going to keep earning the same amount unless they do adjustments for inflation. So there are teachers who are leaving earlier, which means that we're getting fewer new teachers into the profession because 30% of them are dropping out, and we have a lot of veteran teachers who are also leaving. One more thing I'm going to look up here real quick. Alright, so I did go ahead and look up just what percentage of people we have enrolled in teacher education programs, how many people we actually have training to be teachers every year. So it does say that we have about 70% of the enrollment that we had back in 2010 to 2011, which means that the number of people going into the teaching profession overall, not even going into the classroom and becoming teachers, but just even going to get education to become teachers, is down by 30% since about 2010. So we do have fewer people going into the profession right now than we used to. We also have people taking early retirement, and we also have people who are dropping out within the first 5 years. So I just wanted to bring those statistics to your attention just so you are aware of the fact that education seems to be having fewer and fewer teachers, which as a special education teacher, for me, I always feel like I have very good job security because it's a program that not a whole lot of people go into, and if I ever decide to leave where I'm currently at and go into a different position, I know that there will be many jobs available, which is good if you actually are a teacher. However, if you're a school trying to hire teachers or even students who need teachers, that can be a problem. Alright, let's head back into the video and see what else she has to say.
Well, I made it to 3 years and couldn't take anymore. It was my first time dealing with depression, and I knew I made the right decision when I got into a car accident, and the first thought I had in my head was, at least I don't have to go to work today.
I just had to take a moment to say that is very relatable. I actually really like the position that I'm in right now at my current school. However, I've definitely worked in some classrooms in the past where I would actually hope to go into the hospital or to get very violently ill rather than to have to go into work. So I understand where she's coming from with this one.
That's not normal, and I wish I would have talked to a therapist and left sooner, because I even think 3 years was too much for the type of workload that teaching comes with. You're overworked, you're underpaid. There's always a to-do list. You are never finished with your to-do list. There are constant demands, and I got tired of being anxious all the time and being overwhelmed all the time. And they tell you, be okay with not getting everything done. I'm a hard worker. I'm a good worker. And if I couldn't get everything done, I tried to get most things checked off of my list in a day.
Once again, I do find this part relatable here. Keep in mind that as a teacher, you are spending most of your day in front of students, usually about 6 hours a day actually teaching. But then you have maybe a 45-minute to an hour time during the day to plan out what you're going to do during that 6 hours. Also to get all your grading done. As an intervention specialist, I also have paperwork such as IEPs, have to write lesson plans. There is a lot that needs to be done, and a lot of it can't actually be done during the workday because you have to be teaching. So I understand what she's saying here, where it does seem like there's always a lot to do, and just it doesn't seem like there's a lot of time to get it all done.
But with teaching, that will drain you very quickly. It's easy to talk about boundaries. It's easy to talk about how to take care of your mental health. But when you actually take those steps, people look at you as if you did something wrong. A lot of times as a teacher, I was asked to cover classes, even within my first year, constantly asked to cover classes. I understand teacher shortage, no subs. People don't want to be in the classroom. I wonder why.
Again, I already mentioned this, so I'll just really briefly say it here. There's definitely a shortage of teachers going on, and I've also been asked to cover classes. Sometimes if I'm out, they might even take my students and split them up to several different classes. They might sit in with the gym teacher all day. If there aren't any subs available, they kind of just have to put the students wherever they can so that somebody's watching them, but it ends up being a wasted education day. There's no point in students even being there. It's stressful for them, it's stressful for whoever has to cover the class. It's not the best situation, and to be honest, it doesn't seem like there's really any point in having the students at school if they're not doing what they're there to do, which is learning. It just gets in the way of education of everyone involved, which is just one of the downsides to not having enough teachers available right now.
Why? But not only worrying about my own class, but also having to cover someone else's class. And I worked for a district who, they would pay you $50 to cover a class, but within that, after taxes, it's really not that much, and money never compares to my mental health anyway.
She is also lucky to be in a district where they'll pay for that. The district I currently am in does pay you a little extra if you're covering a class, but I have also worked in districts where they won't cover that, especially with charter schools that I've worked at. They typically don't have the funds, they aren't able to put extra money towards having teachers cover as subs, so they just say it's part of your duties, that's what you need to do.
So that didn't matter. So right off the bat, starting my first year teaching, I experienced the chaos of it all. The environment is complete chaos because everyone's trying to survive. You have people who are, I'm just gonna keep it real, it seems like they're in denial. So I would say toxic positivity, where everything's okay all the time. We're gonna be okay, we're gonna get through it. And I'm all for being positive, but it gets to a point where you can't ignore certain issues.
The toxic positivity angle is actually very interesting because I do think that's kind of what you hear a lot whenever you tell your administrator that you're feeling burnt out, you don't know what to do, you've tried everything, you're running through your list of all the interventions you've tried with this particular student and everything that you've tried to sort of help them learn this skill that just doesn't seem to be coming. And that's kind of what you get, is just, you're doing the best you can. I see that you're working hard and we appreciate having you here. And, it's good to hear that, but at the same time, it's very frustrating when you're actually teaching, that at the end of the year, they're going to be evaluating you based on you're teaching and based on what the students are learning. And when you talk about these things, you try and get some advice, you try and learn how to handle things, you don't really get much solid advice. You just get you're doing a good job, keep it up. Whether it seems like it or not, they're doing great things in your classroom. I appreciate it, but I would really like a little bit of extra help with knowing what specifically can be done. However, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that are in the way of really being able to have the best education that students can have, especially when it comes to policies that are in place. So it can be frustrating. I know it's also frustrating for the principals too, because their hands are a little bit tied, so we can only do so much, they can only do so much. At the end of the day, it's not really benefiting everybody.
Especially. So I'm going to go into the top reasons why I decided to leave the teaching profession. So number one, the pay. I got my little list here if you see me looking down, the pay. So back in 2021 was when I first started teaching, and with a bachelor's degree, my very first check was $2,300. That, after paying rent, there's not much left. If you're going to teach, you probably need to be married or be okay with having a roommate for the majority of your life.
So I'm just going to touch on that part real quick. That is something you hear an awful lot when it comes to teaching, is the pay. I did also look in her comments, because her top comment at the bottom mentioned that she said she made that amount per month. That wasn't bi-weekly. So, I mean, per month, making about $2,300 isn't going to get you very far. So I definitely understand where she's coming from. In my experience, it definitely depends on the district you're in. Some districts will pay more than others. There was a particular district I was in where we even took a pay cut because the district just didn't have the money to give everyone what they would normally be making. So I think across the district, they cut everyone's pay by 3%. So pay is definitely an issue. That's something we've all heard before. No surprises there.
2, disrespect from students. In the 3 years that I've been teaching, I've been cussed at countless times. I've been called fat. I've been called a B word. I've been called mean, just for being human and, wanting my space. Students don't really understand boundaries, and so I had to do a lot of lessons about personal space, a lot of lessons about social skills, because there's a lot of that lacking in today's society. And so,
all right, just real quick here, very relatable. All of what she said there is stuff that I've seen in the classroom as well, just disrespectful students. And again, having the lessons that are focused around being respectful and personal space and keeping your hands to yourself, even with older students. These students know how to behave. In my experience, those lessons aren't really teaching them much because it's something they already know. They're just choosing not to do it. So it's hard to be able to, or have to take time out of your day every day to teach those skills, deal with the behaviors, instead of just teaching. As a teacher, you can't just teach the skills and go through and let students know what they need to know. You also have to be teaching these social skills as well and dealing with students who are just being very disrespectful, and they know what they're doing. They know that they shouldn't be doing it, but they also often know that there aren't serious consequences for doing it. So that makes teaching a lot harder than it really needs to be.
So yes. 3, toxic positivity. I like to call this teachers in denial. It takes a lot of inner and emotional strength to acknowledge that something is not working and you are miserable. It takes a lot of work to leave something when you went to school for 4 years to study and it doesn't work out the way you planned. It takes a lot of courage to move on from something that you thought you wanted or something that you really wanted to work, or because you think about the good times, or you think about the students who you absolutely love and the students who you want to be there for, and you think about how much you want to make a difference. But it becomes that the environment that you are working in has a bigger impact on you than you're making an impact in the lives of other people.
All right, so I already touched on this area a little bit, but I did find it interesting in there where she mentioned the 4 years of school, because that's something to keep in mind when it comes to teaching, as well as you do need to go to college for it. And I do think a lot of teachers have that issue where it's like, well, I went to school for 4 years. I need to try and stick this out as much as I can. But it does impact your mental health, as she's saying. If you're putting up with students who are cursing and acting out and not listening, not doing what they need to do, when you add in all the stress of the extra workload, it can be a lot. And I understand that. So I can definitely understand why teachers are leaving, especially when you consider the fact that, you know, in order to be a teacher, you do have to go to school for at least 4 years. Many teachers go longer to get, you know, graduate degrees or specializations. And then you have this knowledge, you feel prepared, you want to be able to teach the students, and they just are treating you so badly. They're giving you so much disrespect. And that's something she's also mentioned too, is just the lack of respect that you get in a profession where it feels like you should be looked up to by these students. It feels like you should be getting something back from your students that you're teaching from. And sometimes you do, sometimes you have a great group. Like I've said, I enjoy the class that I'm with now. But there are definitely classrooms where it feels like you're just banging your head against the wall. The students are mean to you. They're cursing at you. They're not at all concerned about the consequences. They want to get out of school suspension because for them it's just a day out of school. They're not learning because they're absent all the time. And then when they do come in, they're just causing problems. There are a lot of issues that come up, and it can be very stressful for teachers. Even though they did put in all this effort to get there, it's definitely understandable why they might take a step back and be like, you know what? I've tried all I can, I've put all this effort into it, but at the end of the day, I need to do what's best for me.
Number 4, this is my favorite one. Y'all ready for this? Cliques. You have groups. So working at a high school as a teacher was like going back to high school as a student. There are teachers who are in their groups, they're happy in their groups, and they don't go explore and interact with other people. Again, it depends on the school, it depends on the environment, it depends on the culture. But I experienced this within all 3 years of my career.
And in my experience, I have seen that some. I don't think that I've seen it maybe as much as she has. I've been to multiple different schools in my career, and I could definitely think of maybe 2 of them where this was definitely a big problem. There was definitely one school where I felt like there was like a little group of girls who were the principal's favorites, and he would let those teachers kind of just do what they wanted to do. So you will see this every now and then, but as she already mentioned, it depends on the school and it depends on the environment in there. So it can be an issue. This is one that I would say is more of a draw depending on what type of school you're at and what type of principal you have in charge.
Number 5, lack of support from other teachers and admin. It becomes a blame game. I think everyone is struggling, but they're trying to be strong. And going back to the toxic positivity, I think that people look at the toxic positivity as them being strong. But again, I look at it as them being in denial. If you are not happy and a job is completely draining you of all your energy, you got to be real about it. You have to talk about it.
All right, sorry, I paused that one a little early there. All right, so I'm not going to give too much time on this because it's already been addressed, and I think she kind of already touched on what I said earlier when it comes to the toxic positivity and the type of support that you get from administration. It's usually just sort of like, you're doing a good job, keep it up, but it doesn't feel like you're actually really being supported beyond that. And I agree with that one. That's something I do see a lot in the classrooms, especially as a special education teacher. I feel like a lot of times administration doesn't really know how to help. They might be able to lead me towards some people who are able to help out, and at least in the district I'm in now, they do actually have specific supports in place to help you. But sometimes it does just feel like there's nothing you can do, and especially when you have like 1 or 2 students in particular where it's like, I have already gone through everything in my teacher repertoire, all these strategies that I've used, and it just doesn't seem like it's working. There isn't always someone who's going to be able to give you any extra advice. So it's sort of like you're going in every day, you're trying everything you can, you're trying your hardest, but you just don't know what else to do in that situation. And sometimes there just isn't anyone who knows how to help you out apart from saying, good job, keep it up. It can be frustrating. So I definitely see how that can be an issue because you're the one who has to deal with these problems day after day after day, and you just don't have any ways to work them out. You just don't have any solutions. It can be frustrating. It can tire you out for sure.
I was tired of the abuse, and I did start to hate it in the end. I'm thankful for my students. The students who were very appreciative of me. I'm thankful for what I've learned and the skills that I've gained, but I don't see myself going back. I thought about going back until I finished grad school, but again, I got into a car accident, and I'll actually leave the pictures for you guys to see. It was a really bad accident. And as tragic as the accident was, I was happy that I didn't have to go to work. Like, I had a legit reason to not show up to work. And that confirmed that that environment was literally slowly killing me, draining the life out of me. And again, that car accident also showed me that I should be doing what I love. I should be going where I feel appreciated and valued. And that is what I plan to do. So I'm not trying to encourage anyone to quit teaching or to not go into the education field, but I do encourage you to do your research, to find teachers, interview them, even if you can go and observe at a school to see exactly what you're getting yourself into, and if that is something that you can maintain as a career for 30 plus years. I couldn't make it past 3 years, so there was no way I could make it to 30 years. Absolutely not.
And I think we're going to go ahead and finish it right there. I did jump around a bit during that video, so if you want to see the full video, I'll link it in the notes below. But I do agree with most of what she said. I will say, as far as the toxic positivity in there, it does sound like that was a big reason for her. There was obviously the cliques involved, there were the students being disrespectful, which I think is a big issue that I see in general. But when it comes to that toxic positivity too, I think part of it is just the frustration with feeling like you don't have any solutions. So I do feel like I do a lot of research when I'm up against a wall and it seems like the students just aren't learning something, or if I have a student who is really struggling, I tend to get on the computer and Google and do everything I can to try and find solutions to work that out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I do think that's helpful for me because it does make me feel like I've made a difference myself if I do find something that works really well, because then I'm like, okay, this was me. This wasn't even an idea that somebody else gave me. It was me going online and doing that research myself, doing the work and finding something. And then usually that's able to even apply in the future when it comes to other classrooms as well. So while it is frustrating if you're not getting the support, and while there might just be people saying, oh, just keep working, pushing through, she sounds like she kind of just gave up at that point. I do think that there are ways that you can go and research and find some strategies that will help, even if there aren't other people who are helping you out there. Google is a great source. I use it all the time, and it definitely provides some valuable resources that you can find online. But it does take that extra work, and again, teachers are already overworked. There's already a lot going on, so if you don't have the time for that, or you don't have the time and the strength to implement everything that you're finding, that can be very difficult. I definitely see why she's quitting. I understand why she's quitting. And I definitely agree with most of her reasons in there. And I may go back through and look at some others of these in the future, because I do think there's some valuable information in there, stuff that some people should see, whether they're planning to go into the teaching profession or if they just want to understand, why is my student never have a sub when they're supposed to? This gives you a good idea of kind of what's going on in our classrooms, what's going on that's causing teachers to just be like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. It's impacting our education system as a whole. It's impacting our students. It's making many people not even want to send their children to school anymore. Homeschooling is up around the country. Online school is up. There are just a lot of factors involved and a lot of implications to what's been going on. I do feel like there needs to be some sort of change when it comes to education. Obviously, increasing pay is a good start, but also just dealing with the overall attitudes of students in the classroom. I know it sounds like it's old-fashioned to say, oh, well, kids used to be better behaved. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but it's definitely gotten to a point where we can't give the same consequences we used to either. I'm not saying we need to go back to whipping students when they're bad, but there needs to be consequences that they actually care about, because without those, there are some students who just aren't going to put forth any effort and aren't going to treat their teachers with respect. And for these teachers who work really hard for them and have gone to school in order to become teachers, that's very, very frustrating. And many teachers decide to go into other professions. I actually get recommendations randomly sometimes saying, hey, these are some great jobs that ex-teachers have gone into. teachers actually do succeed very well in a lot of different areas, because in order to be a teacher, you have to be able to study hard, you have to be able to be a good public speaker, you have to be empathetic to the needs of the students. There are a lot of skills that go into teaching that carry over into other environments. So it actually is a job where you can take those skills that you've learned and apply them in different areas and be just fine. So hopefully, I don't know what area this girl is going to go into, what her future plans are, but I do wish her the best, and I hope she finds a job that is much more beneficial to her mental health and where she's able to strive and succeed. And thank you for listening today. If you get the chance, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!